Hi everybody, I'm Joanne Manister, a blogger with Scientific American, and on this day, one day before Scientific American's 168th anniversary, I am pleased to join you, along with my Read Science co-host Jeff Schomeyer, in a chat with eminent biologist and naturalist and two-time Pulitzer Prize winner, E.O.Wilson. Welcome, Dr. Wilson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's like coming home. I've been associated with Scientific American, at least publishing articles there since the 1950s. Let me repeat that, 1950s. So I've been around a long time with Scientific American.
And you certainly deserve the places you have had in the Scientific American journalistic world there. So for those of you who may not know, and I think that would be very few of you out there in the audience, Dr. Wilson is best known as a myrmecologist. And those who don't know that word, it's an ant expert, someone who studies ants. And you are indeed the world-renowned expert on ants. You are a leader in the study of sociobiology, the social interactions of animals, and you've extended that to humans to a certain extent. You are the author of several books, 30, is that right? Something along those lines?
Actually, I'm not positive, but I think it's 30.
That's a lot of books. And
that sounds like a form of snobbery, but I haven't counted it lately. I think it's 30.
And your latest book is a collection of letters of encouragement to those wanting to study science called, and your book is so shiny it's hard to get up there, Letters to a Young Scientist, sort of along the lines of Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet or Peter Medawwar's Advice to a Young Scientist. So we are so glad you are here, and we do want to talk about your latest book, and we look forward to talking about how to communicate science to the general public as well. And I think what we'll do is have Jeff start off with our first question.
I'm very happy because we're interested in talking today, and our main shtick is usually about communicating science. And it's hard for me to think of someone who's been better for his entire career at communicating the excitement of science than what you write in your book. And I want to quote a short sentence from Letters to a Young Scientist that captures a lot of that for me. You said, "The great scientist who works for himself in a hidden laboratory does not exist." And this reminds me of a colleague I worked with who always stressed that writing was not something that one did about one's research, but that writing was part of his research. And that whole idea that, you know, why bother? What's the point of doing research if you don't communicate it? You've done an admirable job of that. And then the question is, how do you integrate the writing with the research and you know, manage to get it all done?
I guess it's because I follow a dictum. I think that was once said by Colin McCullough, the writer, Southern writer. She said, "How do I know what I think until I've written it?" So there is a great value in sitting down and writing out what you think you found, or what you think you thought, and putting it in that form, and then your thinking and your planning for further research becomes that much clearer. And of course, I think what you're implying as well is that science is a social phenomenon. I mean, there is no point in conducting research that only you, the results of which only you know. All of us want to communicate what we have found. That is in our genes, to find and communicate what we found.
And that's an important thing in these Letters to the Young Scientist, is that science is not the ivory tower pursuit. Science is a social pursuit. And at one point you implied, too, that not realizing that scientists are motivated by love and fears and ambitions and personal things. Trying to deny that is not doing anyone any good, and certainly not going to help your science.
No, it's very important, as I point out to my young colleagues, and I tell you, I've gotten to the age where all of my colleagues are younger colleagues. I'm reminded of something that a a great physicist once said that his theories won out because he lived longer than all his critics. Well, at any rate, at any rate, I have found that the social part of it you have to be very aware of, and it's not just the importance of communicating thoughts, ideas, what you have found, but you need to be aware of the fact that scientists are very human, that they compete, that they have jealousy, that they actually absolutely without exception and will react angrily if they are not followed in this. They must be given proper credit for what they discover, because that is what propels their career and how they make their living and how others think of them, their prestige. That everyone be extremely careful about giving credit to those who make the discoveries, the actual discoveries.
Is that what selects scientists, or do scientists learn to work for the acknowledgement as the goal rather than the millions of dollars that we're not paid?
I believe so. I think it's correct to say that really productive scientists are motivated by the discoveries and the acceptance of the discoveries and the witnessing of the development of a field that they are able to influence by their discoveries. You just mentioned, or we just mentioned, the discipline of Myrmecology, the scientific study of ants. Well, I have this little quiet dream, it's one of my smaller dreams, that I want to see Myrmecology mentioned with the same degree of attention or recognition as ornithology, the study of birds, and herpetology, reptiles, amphibians, and so on. And I think that's what every scientist would like to think they're doing, which is elevating the visibility and the importance of the field that they're contributing to.
That's I think that's a good idea, and I think it's important because myrmecology is not a word that's used every day, and you're just wanting to see that happen more often. So let me bring up something sort of a personal note. In this book and also The Naturalist, you talk about a boyhood friend, Ellis McLeod, who I'm at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and he is the man I consider my mentor. So he was in the Department of Entomology, and I was in his class called Cells and Tissues, and I remember one day sitting there and thinking, I could do this for the rest of my life. Not sit in the class, but to follow that topic, the tissues, and that's what I did. And of all people I consider a mentor, it's him, because he had a passion for teaching and explaining. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how your interactions with him led sort of both of you on the path to become entomologists?
I'm glad you brought that up because, Joanne, because this comes directly to the great question before us, and that is how to teach science and how to get more people interested in science, and beyond that, to actually get those who have special interest and vision as youngsters to want to go on and be scientists. Ellis McLeod and I met when we were 9 years old, and we were living in Washington, D.C. My father had come up from Alabama for a short period of time. He was in one of those alphabet Roosevelt agencies. This was the REA, Rural Electrification Administration. And he came up for a short stint of work in Washington. And Ellison lived a block away from me. And we discovered we were both interested in catching butterflies. I was already I'd made a net I found out how to make a butterfly net, and I was out beginning to catch those, and he was interested, and we got started together roaming around in Rock Creek Park nearby and getting all the books we could find on butterflies. There weren't very many. And very early, 9, 10 years old, we were so taken up with this pursuit, and also with the inspiration of the Smithsonian and the National Museum of Natural History nearby, where we knew that scientists, scientists of magnitude of intellect and everything that we can't even imagine, were safely ensconced and actually making a living doing that. And Ellis and I decided when we were about 10 years old we were going to become entomologists. He went his way. I met him again. He came up to Harvard for his PhD in later years. But we both became entomologists, and I'm so happy to hear that he ended up inspiring someone like you, Joanne. And but let me continue on. I arrived at the University of Alabama then as a 17-year-old. I was the first member of my family to go to a college or a university. It was a new world for me. I had the great good fortune of, in 1946, when I arrived, I was just a little too young to go into World War II, but I was found myself with 3 other young men who were just returned. All 3 were combat veterans, and they were only about 20 or 23, right in that age group. And they had all decided they wanted to be entomologists. So we got together, and we roamed the forest and the streams and the caves of Alabama for the next 3 years, talking evolution and entomology and all the related subjects. And every one of that little group, we had a mentor there, incidentally, who was an entomologist who inspired us. All of that group, each and every one, became professors of entomology. So I think that tells us something about companions, about communicating early, about excitement of discovering things together, which is the essence of science itself, but it can be engendered at a very early age.
Is that the central the thing that succeeds most in recruiting young scientists is communicating the enthusiasm?
It's got to be.
I think that's really what it's
yeah,
for.
It just has to be, and I think that perhaps the most, I don't have that experience with high school level or even grammar, but I believe that even though our attitudes, our emotions, our hormones, what gives us the greatest excitement and pleasure is very different at 17 years of age than it is at 27 or 47 or on. Nonetheless, the one common feature of getting people interested in science, and then some of them who have the gift or the interest to pursue this, is the enthusiasm of the teacher. And not just the enthusiasm, saying, all this is just great stuff, it's all very interesting, I'm going to show you this, I'm going to show you that, but also, if the teacher has an enthusiasm for particular subjects in science, so, she just takes the students out because they just got to see that comet. And finally, everybody gets to see, and there's a telescope, and you've got to talk about it, and they got to figure out, what it would be like to land on a meteor right out there somewhere, and so on, and get the students fired up by that like that. Or conversely, to look down and say, the teacher may have an interest in protozoans, and pond ecology, and so all the excitement of science can be focused through that lens. And we could have teachers like that, and that's what we should cultivate in our teachers, and I'm sure you're that kind, Joanne. You could not be any other type different from that. I think you are really doing the very best thing you could do. It's not so much teaching them calculus, and get calculus at any time. It's not so much making sure that they've got all the terms right, like meiotic spindle. Yeah. That's not important. The important thing is that you're going from top down in some important subject that the teacher is focused on, is thrilled by, and you're seeing what it's like to explore the unknown, to go out and really find things that are new and exciting.
Despite my being a physical scientist, which is often associated with the mathematics, I want to thank you, particularly in Letters to a Young Scientist, for the entire section that you wrote about mathematics and where it fits into the picture. Because if what draws people in and makes for maintaining ambition and success in science is that enthusiasm, and I think that's quite credible. What can quench that enthusiasm faster than requirements for math when it's unnecessary? And so thanks so much for pointing out that if the math isn't your thing, there's still plenty of great work available for you to do. Don't worry about it.
And thank you, as a physicist, no less, for bringing that up. I've gotten a lot of compliments from physicists and mathematicians for publishing that. And it stirred even a controversy in the pages of the journal of the American Journal of Mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
But I have I have people there who agree with just what you said. Namely, there are fields of science that require, in time, as you get into them, a pretty fluent familiarity with with mathematics, so you can go from top to bottom. And I think that's as much a matter of training as it is talent. Talent's important, but it's a matter of training right. But you just said the great truth in my eyes, which is the worst thing you can do in teaching mathematics is to teach mathematics you can't use.
Yes.
And so the important thing is to avoid the formula of teaching, I think, which is soporific, it's anesthetic, and it is lethal, which is to tell the student, so you want to go into science, do you? Well, maybe you'd like to join our little science club here. And I want to tell you, if you're going into science and you say you're really interested in biology, well, we'll get you there. But I want you to know that, first of all, to get into biology, you have to know some chemistry. In order to get into chemistry, you've got to learn some elementary physics here. And while you're at it, you better pick up some math so you really understand the physics better. And then you're off. You're off climbing that steep Himalayan mountain, which consists of base camp math. Next camp up, you're running short of oxygen and food. Physics. Next camp up, your chemistry. You're beginning to wonder why the hell you're up there. Anyway, whether the summit of biology is worth getting to, you've got to take it top down. You have to say, biology? Great. Let's go out next weekend with the others who are doing some research, and we're going to do biology. And we'd like you to help us find this extremely rare salamander, which is supposed to be in this area, but unfortunately might have gone extinct. It would be such a great thing if we could find the salamander. And let's find out, we'll tell you all about it, and would you like to join us in the hunt? And then from that, you're into herpetology, and you're taking it from the top down. You learn what you need to do to become a herpetologist, or you can go over into entomology, or you can go over into comparative and molecular and evolutionary molecular biology. There's so many openings then as you proceed from the top of the mountain down. That's my philosophy.
I appreciated it simply because I was one of those biologists who struggled with math, and my parents weren't good at math, and so when I had trouble with math, I really had no one to turn to. So when I got to college, it was even a bigger struggle. But when I started to get in my science classes and could see how math was going to be useful, then I went back and worked with the math. But if they had just said, nope, first 2 years, no biology, let's just stuff you in the math and the basic chemistry, and then you'll get your biology. So luckily there was some wisdom there in that. And I still like to say that there were people who were very upset, of course, that you said, you know, they thought you just said you don't need math, and we know that's not true. You explain you need math.
I didn't say that. I said you really need some fluency. And I would say that if you had any requirement at all at the high school level that you want to have everybody familiar with, it would be in the areas of statistics,
Yes.
probability, and so on. And these are fun things anyway.
Yeah.
But actually, I derived that attitude, shall we say, or technique from 42 years of teaching undergraduates and mostly freshmen, but also upperclassmen and graduate students at Harvard. I discovered that the best way to teach was top-down. You start with big, important questions. I'm talking about now an elementary class freshman at Harvard. And you ask those questions one after the other, and then break them down. Start talking about them at different levels that could lead them right on into more difficult parts of biology. So even in Harvard freshman classes, I had students deriving the Hardy-Weinberg law of gene distribution, and they didn't know what had happened. So I started in, the subject of, why do we have sex? Mm-hmm. And I noticed that when I always started with a subject like that,
they're going to listen.
They would lay down their copies of the Harvard Crimson that they were going to secretly read while I was talking, and lay down and started taking notes. Well, top-down teaching is and top-down experience is what we're talking about. At least I'm talking about. And I want to add briefly, and I'm talking too much, but then you've invited a Harvard professor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we're happy to have you talk.
You've got to expect to call it an excessive talk. And it's the following. It's the other principle, another principle that I hammer in the book, Letter to a Young Scientist. And that is what makes successful scientists is far more entrepreneurship. To the desire to do something really new, to get out there and find a piece of ground that's yours, a piece of the frontier that you're the first to arrive at. And it's an awful lot like innovative business. It's finding something people haven't done. Mm-hmm. By the time you're an undergraduate major in biology, you're in a position to be able to think like that. And that is more than important than anything you're going to learn in advanced math. My discovery I made early on was that when I did research that required advanced mathematics, including models, I didn't learn the math. I got a mathematician as a co-author. I've got all sorts of co-authors of my articles through the years who are mathematicians.
Well, yes, there's that reminds me of Principle 1 from Letters to a Young Scientist, which I've written down, that it is far easier for scientists to acquire needed collaboration from mathematicians and statisticians than it is for mathematicians and statisticians to find scientists able to make use of their equations. And that's a very sensible way to do it. That focuses on the enthusiasm, the ambition, the entrepreneurship.
Well, actually, when you get a mathematician colleague, their excitement is equal to yours. Mm-hmm. They're showing you right away what you might be able to do or might not be able to do in terms of explaining things by building dynamical models and so on. And you're showing them things that they've never even dreamed existed.
Yeah.
So you get a wow reaction on both sides.
Things that they can do with the mathematics rather than just write it down.
And they love that. They love to be able to see something concrete appearing in a biological journal, for example.
Mm-hmm. That was I know some of that because I've had some colleagues who were the mathematical physicists, and I was pretty much strictly experimental and made the equipment work. And I could be amazed at some of the things they could come up with, but it was fun to see that they could be amazed that stuff happened.
Yeah, And you know, if you just let them do the modeling without talking with them all the time, after a while they wander off, and they're building models
Hmm.
that don't apply to anything you've ever heard of.
Yeah.
They love them, but they have to be sort of coaxed back to the subject.
Well, we have to keep them off the street somehow.
I think that's
They're a
right.
danger otherwise.
That's interesting. So, as a biologist who did the math she had to, but wasn't really happy about it until she saw the application, I have 4 kids, but my 2 oldest are already in on their path studying, and my oldest is studying atmospheric sciences, which is all math and physics, and
Hmm.
then my next one is studying physics. She's a sophomore, and yeah, it's amazing that I've created young, mathematicians. But this is related to the fact that the high school that they attended had a fantastic, passionate physics teacher who said, let's go do this, let's go. And then you still had to do the equations, but it was like, get out there and do that. So that enthusiasm. So you're exactly right about the teachers that are out there influencing students to pursue science. So I don't take credit for my own kids choosing physical sciences. Uh, it was their
Yeah,
teacher.
I'm not going to make any remarks about genes either because I get in trouble
Yes,
doing
you
that.
do.
At any rate, let me ask you the question right back. This becomes a crucial question. I think we solved half the problem this morning just talking, or this afternoon talking about how to get students fired up as we
Hmm.
want them to do. Now, where do we get those teachers?
Right. It's exactly right. Where are they? And can we pay them properly to keep them
I
in
was
the
going to
position?
say, start by paying them a livable wage.
I I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. Like, you see people who are so fantastic but have to leave because they need to support their family or the environment is not supported. Or, of course, we can go into the whole testing that is, confines, keeps the creativity out, keeps the passion out because they have to meet certain standards. So,
Well, let's make
Yeah.
that point explicit too. That we should pay our teachers um, comfortably, not because they're working for the money, but because they shouldn't have to worry about it because they have important enthusiasms to transmit that are vital.
Well, agreed. Why should this country generally keep teachers, including science teachers, near the bottom of the
Hmm.
totem pole in prestige and compensation, whereas in fact we turn around 180 degrees and then declare that our young people are our future, that we're in a techno-scientific, hyper-connected world now, and we need people who are enthusiastic by and well about and well trained in science. We need more creative scientists, all that. And we seem to be working against ourselves
Hmm.
by simply not making it possible, or certainly not very easy, to create that uh, productive pool of future scientists
Hmm.
and science-educated people.
If we can,
So, you know,
if we can dispel another false notion or two that gets in the way of young scientists, I made a note that says that a lot of potential scientists believe that they don't have a path open to them because I think that science is primarily about genius and inspiration and things that they don't have. And I've written down a couple things. I might posit that I think a playful spirit and hard work are really much more important than any of those other things. But let's go back to the question then, so that we can make science a real option for these younger people. What is it? We know now that they can find a path without mathematics first at the base camp. What do they need?
they need what we just said. They need passion that's deep and real and provides them with the kind of day-to-day satisfaction that everybody seeks in their life work. And that can be provided by science.
Hmm.
But let's immediately dispose of the scientific genius myth. And I'm very hard on that in the book, pointing out that I don't know whether I named them or not. I won't now and take the chance, but one of our most revered theoretical physicists scored, I think, 125 or was it 135? I don't know if he scored that high, which is just high normal. You know, that's not what we call genius. You have to get up around 160, 170 to be a certified IQ genius. Another one of our great biologists, unnamed, I think was 122, and I gave my IQ.
Yes.
You know, Harvard doesn't, I'm not sure if they look at IQs when appointing professors, but if they do, it's too late for them. Mine was 123. Well, how can high normal people, I mean, you really need to be a little bit, bright, but you're actually not that much bright. But so what makes them different? It's what we've been saying. It's a passion for what they're doing. It's a passion to discover something important. Sometimes they know exactly what that is and they go for it. At another time, they know a general area, but they're pretty sure that they could, if they can get into that subject, into that area, that there are wonders to be discovered, real scientifically important discoveries. And so, like Keats Balboa, looking out for the first time on the Pacific, they see the possibilities with a wild surmise. In other words, if you have that attitude about, can develop it, about the promise of being an explorer, the last real explorers on planet Earth, then you can't stop people who have that as a motivation.
So in addition, it seems to me that to become a scientist or any sort of thinker, and I presume you'll agree with this, I think you need to spend some time sort of quiet in reflection, and that might be with reading, that might be time in nature. Maybe you can expand on that, as I do feel like maybe young people are bombarded with too many things and too much stimulation, and that this may be a hindrance to becoming a thinker, to becoming someone who can analyze a discovery or even know that they found a discovery.
You know, you just brought up a serious societal problem, and I don't know what the solution is or whether it's eventually going to turn out to be a serious problem. I frequently get very satisfying letters from people who have gone into scientific careers, or they're in natural history, or they became executives in the national park system and so on, who say, I want to thank you for your book, so-and-so, you read it. I read it while I was going up the Appalachian Trail. I spent a summer exploring in the southern Rockies all on my own or with a small group. They read it, you know, the book, they thought about it and so on, or a similar book. I have this instinct, I may be wrong, because I've confessed that somehow in some ways, technologically, I would have rather remained in the 1980s. But that aside, I have this instinct which tells me that the best thing you could do in America and for young people to make sure they get a really good education, including in those areas that require reflection, originality, thought, judgment, is to take their iPhones and throw them out. Not allow them to be Twittering and Facebooking and so on constantly around the clock. How can you learn? How can a young, shall we call untutored person learn very much from talking constantly with 24 other young untutored people? Maybe you can explain this to me, but that's, I think what we really need is a lot more opportunities for young people actually to shut it all off, to have something really interesting and challenging to read or if they got to have an iPhone or iPad, then take that, but go through materials in it, and apps that, or introduce them to a broad, interesting part of the world, and to think about it, and to sort of poke around and see what they might do or become.
As the commercials might say, it's all part of a well-balanced diet is okay. When I was thinking about this expanding, and we're very close to the ideas about the value of liberal arts education and broad thinking and reflection, and I started reading Social Conquest of Earth, and I was utterly delighted that you started by talking about a painting by Gauguin. And that ties in. Joanne and I have had some occasion we started talking about why we need for science and math and engineering education to include more art and not less art.
Couldn't agree more. I've just finished a book. In fact, I'm turning it over for final typing today on the human condition. And I've worked hard on it. And in it, I have a chapter entitled "The All Importance of the Humanities," and I argue that there will come a time that science and technology will no longer be growing at an exponential rate. With knowledge doubling every 10 to 20 years, depending on discipline. But like all exponentiation, it has to slow. And this will then curve over into a more flat curve that we call the logistic curve. But of course, only after accumulating enormous amounts of knowledge and continuing to accumulate knowledge. But eventually, that society will, the world society will become uniform in the knowledge it has. And what will it have then that differentiates people and remains highly creative and stimulating to us the way science does to you and me and hopefully more and more people in this era we live in. And that, of course, would be the humanities, including especially the creative arts. That is the true soul of humanity, of the human species. And we need to be able to start much more vigorously searching for ways to connect not just the creative arts, but the rest of the humanities, philosophy, history, and so on, to science in ways that will bring us into a fuller liberal arts education, just to make that routine, and to give a lot more people attractive entrees into new areas of thinking. I realize this is a little bit blue sky, but I think that this is the way we have to go in this coming century.
But it emphasizes the idea that even science, good science, is a creative activity, and creativity draws on anything for its inspiration, really, and connections, and that making big discoveries with our aforementioned genius, for instance, often means taking inspiration from rather distant ideas.
Well said. I like to say that the ideal scientist thinks like a poet and writes and works like a bookkeeper. In other words, I don't think people, since we are given to these prosaic ways of writing technical papers, and one metaphor in a technical scientific paper is enough to have the editor send it back to you and say, expunge this.
Well, yes. I don't really approve.
Nowadays, it used to be
we are so used to that we sort of feel that there must be something rather very different about scientists' thinking.
So let me ask this question that was posted underneath. It just says a question from the audience, essentially, and I think it ties in. What challenges did you face in writing your novel Anthill compared with writing nonfiction? I mean, were you just dying now, to use your metaphors?
I had to write one novel. I just wanted to see how it was done. I wanted also to bring a novel to my beloved hometown of Mobile, Alabama, and I just wanted to enjoy that creative experience, and I found it quite easy. That is to say, we all daydream, and a good novelist daydreams and gets it on paper. After organizing a little bit into a real story with real characters and with all of the necessary social twists and tensions that you need. I also had the advantage in writing the novel Anthill, a portion of which was actually excerpted and used in the New Yorker, because I knew the biology to start with. I knew the natural history of the area. So when I had our hero running from 3 killers, yes, that's part of the book, through swampland near Mobile, I could describe pretty precisely what the swamp looked like and what was in it. I found it was fun. I found writing fiction was easy and fun.
It's probably a good thing for scientists to write fiction and see what that does for the pathways in the mind, because it's a different thing.
You actually do have to do some research if you want it to be authentic. I'm not a complete fantasist, and I know there are novelists, great novelists, including the ones that I've admired, who are complete fantasists. They write in science fiction, for example, or they make movies of science fiction, but somehow there's something not quite right about the aftertaste of a lot of those. What's the word? It would be confabulation. That is, that you say to yourself, gee, I think it's nice to imagine that, but I can't even see it as plausible. If we could get more novelists who would actually write up, they don't have to be, thin-nosed and square-jawed about getting all the scientific facts. But I'm talking about not science fiction now, but I'm talking about science-based fiction. Right. Science-based fiction would be an exciting area for the 2 great disciplines, the 2 great domains of learning, the humanities and scientists to meet.
There are some people who have been making moves in that direction. I think it's gotten better, and that has also we've talked to a number of journalists who start to use some sort of dramatic techniques while being very science-based, and they've been writing some very effective stories, if you will, about scientific discoveries that make for enthusiastic reading that is going to inspire people.
Yes, and it should be more and more possible. As we come closer to the great goals of 21st century science, which include the origin of life, and the manufacture of artificial life. Heaven protect me from the purists who think that's a terrible thing even to bring up. But as we then get further into astrobiology, for heaven's sakes, we now know of 1,000 planets, and we believe that a substantial percentage of those, well, even if it were less than 10% or even 5%, might well hold life, and that we're going to find out soon with spectroscopy of the atmosphere. I mean, this is exciting stuff. I can imagine, for example, starting novels, starting a movie, with scientists actually coming through with this equilibrium atmosphere, and then finding out that it's within a light year distance. You get it. I've got the movie, or I've got the novel forming in my mind already.
That's fantastic.
I'd love to see them. I'd love to read a book like that. Or a
the excitement of feeling on the edge of discovery is an exciting thing.
That's science.
Yeah.
Real good science is on the edge of discovery. It doesn't matter whether it's microorganisms you're looking at in pond water, or trying to figure out the folding of three-dimensional folding of a protein you're interested in or anything else. It's,
Yeah.
the excitement of science it's always like that.
We've given, I hope we've given a number of young people some inspiration and helped them to see paths where they could find a way and not follow what they think might be the only way to do science. But a motto, I want you to talk and give us an essay answer to the motto that I thought was what Letters to a Young Scientist was all about, is the phrase, "You are needed."
Thank you. I deliberately put that up front, and I said it plainly and harshly almost, like, check it out, join us if you can, learn because you are needed. This is an incredible society we live in, and the same could be said for almost all other societies around the world. We are essentially schizophrenic. That is to say, as I like to put it, our civilization has Paleolithic, Stone Age emotions, medieval institutions, like the U.S. Congress, and godlike technology, and it's an incredible mix, so that we have all this extremely scientific and technological advance occurring all around us, changing our lives in important ways. And at the same time, we have 46% of Americans disbelieving in evolution, and insisting that everything was created in one stroke by God. We have a very large percentage, I don't know the exact figure, but it's too high, refusing to believe that people have had anything to do with climate warming, and so on down the line. We are, as a people, unfortunately not well enough trained or even interested in what I guess they would call our lying eyes tell us in science to make use of it. We're crippled. We actually are crippled in many of the most important actions we should be taking. Everybody knows what they are. We just can't get around to somehow facing them. And that is why you are needed. I don't mean you're doing very well, and so is Joanne. But, the young people, you're needed.
Thank you. That was just fantastic, and that was a very clear message in your book. There is so much we could keep talking to you about, the things you have done, the projects you have started, and the people you have inspired, and not just, people who've inspired you. But we would love to have you back, maybe after your next book comes out, because I think I could keep talking to you all day. But it looks like we're at that sort of uncomfortable point where we should say goodbye, and say goodbye to our audience, and thank everybody for watching and joining us as we had a nice little conversation with Dr. Wilson here. Thank you so much for everything you've done and for your continual flow of inspirational books that deservedly receive the awards they do, the recognition they do. So
Thanks
thank
so
you
very
so
much.
Ed. Is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
I thought we covered the landscape pretty well, and if we now will only take the advice here too that's being distributed by Scientific American as a nation, we'll quickly solve most of our problems.
Yeah. A good morning's work there. Yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us and for our chat with E.O.Wilson, and we'll see you again sometime soon. Thanks.
Thank you.